giving all praise unto Yahbashim Al-Shabashim Al-Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles of great millstone. And all the true brothers that be pushing this truth in sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. And above our body are coming out here to give you this truth for the grace and mercy of Yahbashim Al-Shai. It's going to be a video focusing on the famine, the orchestrated famine that Esau is preparing to reduce and to reduce the population in the world, and in turn further his agenda of the NWO. And we know from the scriptures such as the book of Psalms, the 83rd chapter, the book of Job, the 20th chapter, and the book of Job, where it speaks about the secret counsel of the wicked, that this is in actuality a cabal of Edomites furthering their enterprise throughout the four corners of the earth to the end, that they reduce the world's population, but specifically to this video, the chosen of Israel. Okay, so the book of Revelations 12 and 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devils come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth he has a short time. And how do they know they have a short time? The book of Matthews. And this is why all of this is happening. This is happening because the prophets of the Lord are out here teaching the word of the Lord. And as a result, Esau is retaliating. And part of the retaliation is to go head first in this agenda of the NWO. Matthew 24 and 14. And this gospel shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So by the way, the prophets coming out here throughout the four corners of the earth, let's get that word in the book of Malachi, the 4th chapter. Esau can identify from the scriptures that his end is near. And that's very easy to understand. That's not a deep spiritual thing that Esau has to comprehend. When we look at the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, and we can go to the book of Malachi, book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, and the first verse says, for behold, in those days and in that time will I bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. I will gather all the nations to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, and I plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel. So Esau understands these basic scriptures, right? They got particular people that go through the scriptures to try to decipher what's happening and what to do. They got witches and warlocks to figure out what to do and when to do it. And by way of seeing the prophets out there, they've determined that it is time for them to make a push towards their NWO. Now, this is all going to become relevant in a second when we go into the article, but we're going to go to the book of Malachi, the 4th chapter first, and see that the scripture says that in those days and in that time, the Most High was going to send Elijah the prophets before the coming of the great and dreadful day. And with the prophets being raised up, the 12 tribes of Israel are being raised up, and hence the retaliation, and hence the reason why I read the book of Revelations 12 and 12. Hence the retaliation, because Esau knows he has a short time. Now let's take a look at this famine that's coming on the world. And I'm going to read that within the book of Mark, the 13th chapter in a second. But there is a great famine that was promised within the scriptures, time of Jacob's trouble. And they're going to use this. They're going to use a few things. They're going to use a few things, but one of the things that they're going to use is the so-called green agenda. Now, what you have to understand is that Earth is actually cooling. Now, I can't get into the science off the top of my head. That's something I'll have to sit down, do my own research, and provide my own evidence. But for all intents and purposes, when you've got CO2 and many of these other so-called pollutants, these are naturally occurring gases that, for the longest, the Earth has produced and utilized. For instance, when you're dealing with CO2, that's what the trees breathing, okay? And we're dealing with nitrogen. Nitrogen, for the most part, is inert. But they will use that as a means of saying, okay, if it can, right? It can, excuse me, it can connect up with something else and make a pollutant. Which, ultimately, when you look at what's known as intensive farming, it's not, it's full of poisons and chemicals. And they're not addressing that side of the issue. They're going to use this green agenda to basically kill off people. There's going to come a point where food is going to be unaffordable. Therefore, food is going to be rationed. And therefore, you're going to have what's known as the book of the MOTB, the CHIP, the CBDCs, where food is going to be monitored and managed. And this is all part of it. It's all linked up, man. It's all linked up. So Dutch government attempts to forcibly close 3,000 farms to comply with the green agenda. And if you know anything about what's happening out there within the Netherlands, they've been protesting for about 6 months because they're using this radical green plan to slash nitrogen emissions by 50% by way of closing 3,000 farms, okay? That's what they're doing out there. Let's read a little bit of this excerpt. Dutch farmers protesting for months over the government's radical green plan to slash nitrogen emissions by 50 to 95%. 50 to 95% could soon face forced buyouts of their lands. And that's what we saw within Babylon. You had this guy, Bill of the Gates. He was buying up farms, right? For agricultural entrepreneurs, there will be a stopping scheme that will be as attractive as possible. Meaning to say they're gonna buy these farms out and they're not gonna plant anything in there. They're just gonna close them down. Now for the farmer, if you gotta reduce your so-called nitrogen burden by, I don't know, what they said, 50% here or 95%, and they're saying you could do that, or you could take what's known as this payout, and let's see the numbers. The Dutch government plans to purchase 3,000 peak polluters via a £24.3 billion fund. Now, think how much so-called good that you could do within the world. Now, I say so-called because really we don't want good for this society. We want it to be burnt up. But think of how much beneficial things you could do for the world with the 24 billion that they're going to buy the farmers up for. And as far as the farmers concerned, here it is, you're working to meet slim margins, right? You're working to meet slim margins, and somebody's going to come and knock on your door and say, look, we don't want you to stop. We don't want you to farm anymore. We're going to buy the land up. Here's 20 million. Because what's the mathematics, right? If I was to do some mathematics off the top of my head, if they say 3,000, so 24 billion divided by 3,000, that's a hell of a lot of money, right? That's a hell of a lot of money. Let me see if I can pull up the calculator. Okay, let me see if I can pull up the calculator. So let's go to 24, 1, 2, 3. I don't know what. Okay, that's what 24. That's 24 million, right? And I think it's 1, 2, 3 makes 24 billion. Okay, and then you divide that by 3,000. That's 8 million a farm. That's 8 million a farm. Somebody's gonna come. It's just rough maths. Excuse me if I've missed anything there, but you're telling me they're going to pay out 8 million a farmer and the farmer's not going to take that money? That's ridiculous, man. If I was making slim margins, somebody said, look, we're either going to forcibly and use the law to stop you and you get nothing to pay that back to you, or you can take this 8 million. I'm going to take the 8 million. I'm not going to lie to you. That's just business. Take the 8 million and piss off somewhere else, innit? So they got farmers, forced buyouts, right? The country is attempting to reduce nitrogen pollution, etc., etc. Man, let me tell you something about the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the second world's, according to this article, the second world's biggest exporter. Now, I thought ESO was all for the people. I thought ESO was about feeding children. They play all of these adverts about the most impoverished people out there within places like Africa and so on and so forth. I thought ESO was just about feeding the children. Because surely, in a time, especially in the times that we're living in right now with this fabricated war with the Ukraine, right? Especially in the times that we're living in right now, surely they were supposed to be using this resources. Remember, we read 24 billion. They're supposed to be using these resources to feed the so-called poor people, right? Nah, it's not about that. It's about reducing the world's population. It's about killing people off. It's about time of Jacob's trouble. And this is all coming, man. I'm telling you, 2023 is going to be a mother effort. Okay, 2023 is going to be a mother effort. Now, we know from the scriptures that it's going to be a time of Jacob's trouble. We know from the scriptures, Jeremiah 30 and 7 on down, says that Jacob shall be saved out of it. So we don't know how we're going to eat. We don't know how we're going to get through these situations, but the Most High is going to make a way. He has to. Who's he going to deliver if we don't eat? Who's he going to deliver if we're out there dying in the cold? And really, you don't want to be entertaining them kind of thoughts because it'll make your faith weaker. What you have to just understand and accept is that the elect is going to be saved. That's just it. There's no two ways about it. It's just, okay, the elect's going to be saved. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. The Netherlands produces 4 million cows, 13 million pigs, which you ain't supposed to be eating no swine any damn way, 104 million chickens annually, and is Europe's biggest meat producer. And that's why they've been pushing this so-called vegetarian agenda. And you see how these people are easily deceived. I don't know a whole bunch of people that are vegans. That's like a religion within itself. Esau fabricated that religion in order to deceive the people, and it's going to be easier for them to bring about this food famine, right? The country has nearly 24,000 acres, almost twice the size of Manhattan, of crops growing in greenhouses. These greenhouses with less fertilizers and water can grow in a single acre what would take 10 acres of traditional dirt farming to achieve. Dutch farms use only half a gallon of water to grow about a pound of tomatoes, which, while the global average is about 28 gallons. So, they got the tech and whatever. But, I read all of that to just make the simple point that this is, when I looked at the article, this is like the world's second biggest producer. So they want to reduce their productivity, and it's all set up. They want to reduce their productivity in the name of nitrogen, but it's not about nitrogen. It's about reducing the people within the world. That's part of what's written on the Georgia Guidestones. Mark the 13th chapter and the 8th verse. And we can cut it off here. For nation shall rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So a famine is coming, man. A great famine is coming. The time that's known as the time of Jacob's trouble, that's coming. So Yahweh Shema Shai Ra'azah, that was a edification. But I must say, oh, praise unto Yahweh Shema Shai Bashim Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom.